machine gun fire. And Bob Pilot held Leonard in his arms, he said, when Leonard took his last breath. Leonard said, "Tell them I went down fighting." And so consequently, I named the boy Leonard, and the middle name Lee after Bob. Bob's name was Robert Lee.
Wow.
Robert Lee. And the girls I named Patricia Ann and Peggy Ann.
Mm-hmm. And when did Grandpa go into the military?
He went after the three children were born, and the triplets. He was working at Boulder Dam, and he was so distraught about his brother being killed that he wanted to get even. Everybody was so patriotic in those days. They still are, I guess, but he said, "I've got to go make amends for my brother being killed. I've got to, go, I just have to enlist." So he enlisted when the children were, he enlisted in November of 1943. And Bill would, it wasn't their birthday. Their birthdays in December would have been 2, 3, and 4. He enlisted then and wanted direly to go to the Japanese theater. And, well, he went to Maine and also in down in the southern states. I forget the name. It's where Jared went. Where did he go?
Oh, Virginia?
Yeah, Richmond, Virginia, for his boot training.
Uh-huh.
Then they sent him to up to one of the eastern states. I can't think, Rhode Island. I can't think real fast.
No, you're fine.
And went to Rhode Island. And then he came home on leave, and you know where they sent him? The Navy, they sent him to Europe. He wanted to go to Japan, but they sent him in Europe to every country in Europe except England and Ireland. And then he went to the North African campaign. But then he came home on leave again. He was on leave a little while, and they sent him to Okinawa, Japan. That's where he was for 8 months. 8 months in each place.
Wow.
He came home exactly 2 years later in November '45.
And how was that like for you, raising 3 kids?
Well, you know,
4?
we got an allotment from the Navy. The more children you had, we got an allotment from enough to live on, and our rent was only $25 a month. So we got by. I was able, and little babies, children don't eat much.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to save $2,000. So when Grandpa got home, he opened it. The name of it was the Dam Garage, after Boulder Dam. Not cursing. It was the Dam Garage. And he opened that with John Pilot.
Mm-hmm.
He had that. And after he worked at Boulder Dam for a long time. And then he went to work at the Nevada test site for 16 years. And I don't know, you're always busy at those times, so raising your family.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
The only bad thing happened when Grandpa was in the service. Well, Bill had tonsillitis. I had to have his tonsils taken out, and that's the worst sickness there was.
Really?
In 2 years.
You guys were blessed then, huh?
Mm-hmm. We were really blessed, and always had enough to eat. But they had everything rationed. You had to have food stamps to get shoes, for butter, and any kind of meat. You had to have food stamps. And for the people who drove, they had to have stamps for tires or gasoline. And but we always had plenty because, like I say, children didn't demand much for food, and then we were able to pay. We had to walk all over town paying our bills. I didn't drive. That's another story.
Do you want to talk about that at all? Or?
Well, yeah. After Grandpa retired from the Nevada test site, Grandpa was born in Midas, Nevada, in 1913. And he said, I want us to move to Midas. You know, at that time, Las Vegas was starting to grow, and he didn't want a big city. So I said, all right, but I want to know how to drive before we go. Grandpa was a hunter, and he loved to go hunting, staying out for a week or two and so forth. And so I said, I don't want to be stranded in Midas without knowing how to drive. We had to go to Winnemucca to get any funds at all, or groceries or anything like that. And so he relented one time. He said, and he tried to teach me, don't ever have your husband teach you to drive. So he finally relented and said I could have the driver, the learning department, come down and teach me. So they did, and I was 58 at the time. And I always told my grandkids I had kind of a sense of humor when they wanted to get their license. Wait till you were my age before you get your license. My age, so when they found out it was 58, they about passed out. But so I finally got my license, and we moved to Midas in 1980. Lived there until Grandpa had his stroke. But going to Winnemucca for groceries, we went every 3 weeks because it was 130 miles round trip. You don't go that far for a loaf of bread, for instance. So I kept a list, and we'd do our mammoth shopping every 3 weeks. That was the only way to go. And then Grandpa had 2 sisters in Winnemucca and their families. One still lives there, the others passed away. And his one sister, Edna, lived across the street from us in Midas. She was a wonderful person. She and I became best friends. We'd walk together every day, and that's where when I recited my capitals of the United States, all capital cities, and
while you were walking,
trying to learn a little bit. And I still walk that way every day. It takes 20 minutes to the mile, and I walk just about as fast as I used to. If you walk for 20 minutes, you've walked a mile.
Wow. I remember going on walks with you, and I could never keep up because you were so fast.
Well, I walk almost that fast now, but not quite.
So how did you get introduced to the gospel? You said your sister had walked to church in Vegas. But
She was already a member then, when she was about 8, like that, or 9. And, well, excuse me. When I was 32 and Bill was 12, the missionaries came by our house. And we had home teachers come by also before I was baptized. And Grandpa didn't want to become a member. I mean, he was nothing. What I mean is no religion. And so the missionaries came by, and they were women. I wish I'd remembered the one woman, but this one was named Sister Flowers. Her last name was Flowers. And they taught the gospel, and I was going to become baptized, and so I said, well, my son, Shanna and Linda were baptized before that. But my son wasn't baptized yet, and I said, I want us to be baptized together. He was 12. And so we were baptized, and that was a wonderful day. Since then we went, but Grandpa never objected to me going to meetings and everything. He never objected once, but I'd always tell home teachers, sometime Byron will be baptized. He said, you're wasting your time. Every time, you're wasting your time. I waited 50 years for Grandpa to be baptized. He was 83 when he was baptized. 50 years. I taught primary for 5 years, and I was a visiting teacher in Las Vegas. But I still commend Grandpa because he never complained one time about that. We might have become baptized anyway if he had complained.
Oh boy. Well, let me look here. And doo-doo-doo. Sorry, I'm just looking for another question here. How did you choose your children's names?
Okay. Linda's named after the movie star Linda Darnell. And Mary is her middle name. She said, why didn't you name me Linda Marie? It sounds better. And Shanna, Grandpa saw her name in the newspaper. It was spelled Shannah. But I said, that's too long for Wilkerson. So he shortened it to Shanna. And Shanna D, I don't know where the D came from. And William, I chose his name. Byron named Shanna. We both named Linda. And so I chose Bill. The nurse had come in the room to fill out the birth certificate. And so Grandpa said, well, okay, his middle name will be Burnell after his favorite boyfriend. But when the nurse asked me what his name is, I said William Byron. It just came to me, I just said William Byron. So that's it. And the triplets, I already talked about that.
Grandpa wasn't mad, right? That you named him after.
Oh no, he didn't care one way or the other.
Let's see. And did you guys like doing anything together as a family when you were down in Vegas? Or how old were... I guess all the kids were moved out when you moved to Midas, right? All the kids
Oh yeah, they were all married and had kids, and because I was 58. And so Grandpa was 67, him being 9 years older. I've got to emphasize that.
Oh boy.
But it's a good thing he was, because he taught me everything, because I didn't know, just a dumb teenager, 17. But we didn't do anything except take care of the children, I guess. Oh, we'd go to my friend's house and play Monopoly. And once in a great while, we'd go to the movies. With 3 young children, you don't go very many places. And while Grandpa was in the service, I bathed all 3 kids in the bathtub at the same time, because they were young, 2, 3, and 4, to conserve water, too. And so they had the blackout siren.
And what is that?
When the town the siren would go off, and for 2 or 3 minutes, and when it did, you better lower your blinds, because that's to be in practice for if we were ever bombed or anything over here. And that's to lower your blinds on the windows. And so I did, and one time it went off when the kids were in the bathtub, and I had to lower the blinds. They had to sit there till it was over. Then they'd have the whistle come for all clear about 5 minutes later. So they had those practices. That was during the war, and Grandpa said when he was on ship, they couldn't light cigarettes or anything because it would show. The glow of the cigarette would show so many miles away for the enemy. And so this one man lit a cigarette, and he was put in the hoosegow for a while. That's the prison, down in the lower decks of the ship, because he lit the cigarette without thinking. He did that. They arrested him he was in the hoosegow for about like a week. And so it took Grandpa's ship, when they shipped from Oakland, California, in 1933. It was 1944 at that time, because he had first served in Europe. But this was 1944. They shipped to Okinawa, but they couldn't go in a straight line. It would have taken about maybe a week. But they had to zigzag. The ship had to go here and back and forth. You know how long it took them to get to Okinawa? 1 month. Because they had to try to avoid mines the mines. And it's quite a hard life. In all those 2 years, Grandpa was not hurt. as far as I know. He wouldn't talk about the service.
Wow.
But he wasn't hurt. He was very fortunate.
Wow, wow. Let's see. Just trying to think of what we haven't.
Well, one time when Linda was starting the first grade, they had no kindergarten in those days. Shannon was such a cute, petite, had curls and darling, so I dressed her and had Linda take her with. Linda took her to school, but that wasn't the right thing to do. So the teacher sent Linda home with Shanna. But I was so proud of the kids. They were just, and Bill, I had him in curls until Grandpa came home from the service. And Bill had curls, so Grandpa immediately took him up to the barber shop. It changed his looks. With the bonnet, he looked just like a little girl.
Oh no.
He had long curly hair.
Was that the style back then to have the boys have curly hair?
Well, I didn't want, but he was 2.
Uh-huh.
I think Grandpa came home on leave one time, so he took him to the barber shop.
Oh dear.
Because when he got home, Linda, of course, had already started school. She was 4 when Grandpa left, and so she was 6. Just started first grade. And I kept his picture out on the mantle so the kids would remember him. And so I always locked the screen door. We had a latch, a hook latch. And Grandpa came home on leave one time. That's right before he was discharged. And knocked on the door, and I was in bed asleep with the other kids, and Linda was up. And she got a chair and unlocked it, 'cause she knew him by the pictures, and unlocked the door for him to come in.
Oh, and you were
That
still
was at
asleep?
515 Carson Street.
Uh-huh, in Vegas.
Yeah, I was asleep at the time, and
Do you
She-
Oh, sorry, go
she
ahead.
wouldn't let anyone in, but she knew her dad. Pardon?
I was just wondering, my dad talks about a story of when you guys were living in Vegas and he had a friend who always came over and would just open up your fridge and eat stuff.
Oh, they were so friendly, so to speak. They were just part of the family.
Uh-huh.
And we'd have dinner. And Bill was a teenager. He was hungry all the time. We just had to get, like Grandma Molly said she'd just dried the last cup when Bill would be looking in the refrigerator for something to eat.
Oh boy.
Mm.
But I can't remember his friend's name, but he came into the fridge one time and he was just looking for stuff and pulling stuff out.
Right.
And you said, "Oh sure, eat that stuff." And it had been sitting in there for about 3 weeks or something.
Oh yeah, but still good, I guess. Just so it didn't have green mold on it.
Oh no.
I can't remember his name either. He had one friend called Kleenex. He had an allergy all the time, but I don't remember who that was that opened the refrigerator.
Uh-huh.
I wouldn't have objected anyway.
And Grandpa's, or Byron's, mom came and lived with you guys, right?
Her husband was visiting his mother over Molly. He was visiting his mother. Molly didn't go. She had a job as a waitress in Las Vegas. And so, while he was cleaning his gun out in his mother's backyard, why, her dog and I don't know why he had his dog with him, but they became jealous. His dog came on more. His name was Morris. Morris was lap, and Morris was petting him. So the other dog jumped on all of them, both of them, and the gun fired, but Morris thought it was empty, but it had one shell in it, and it hit Morris and killed him.
And this is Molly's husband.
And that's why Molly came to live with us for a few weeks, she said, until she got on her feet. For a couple of weeks, maybe a month. So she moved in with us when Sally was 5. And Sally was 27 when Molly moved up. No, when she passed away. She was 27. That was 25 years. But they would have been good years, but Molly didn't like me. And so they were 20, 23 years wasted time. Just waste because she wouldn't let me cook. In those days, you had to mind your elders. You know, I was so dumb. If that happened nowadays, I'd say, I beg your pardon, I'm going to get dinner right now. You go sit down. But I wouldn't do it. You had to honor your elders. So, but the reason I said 23 years, because she was with us 25. The last 2 years, she became hard of hearing and seeing, and she depended on me to do the cooking. And so she and I got along real well for those 2 years.
23 years wasted.
But I was a stubborn type. You know, I wouldn't adhere to all of her wishes. So we were always getting in arguments and stuff, but she still wouldn't let me cook. I had to sneak to do anything.
Wow. And
People say nowadays, why didn't you assert yourself? And that I just wasn't raised that way, you know.
Mm-hmm. And we forgot to talk about Sally. How did you pick out Sally's name?
She's named after my mother,
Mm-hmm.
Alice. My mother's name was Mary Alice. Mary Alice Thompson was her maiden name. And so I named Sally, I named her Alice Ann. And Byron said, well, we'll nickname her Sally. That's a nickname for Alice, is Sally.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how she got it. And that's how you got your name.
Yep. Yep. And what do you remember anything about your grandparents? Did you ever see them?
Now, my mom, her mother died when Mama was 6 weeks old, so you call that a birth death. She died of pneumonia because she got her feet wet after she had Mama. So we never knew her because, like I say, Mama was 6 weeks old. But Mama's dad was a great man. DJ, we call him. His name was David John Thompson. He lived in Altona. And I knew him. He came down to Las Vegas one time to the Ideal Court to visit. One time, that's before I was about 15. And he couldn't see very well because he was under his car. He had one eye that was kind of weak. But he was under his car trying to heat the manifold because things were frozen up and he had to see what was the matter with his car. And the bolt came loose and hit him in his good eye, so he was almost blind then. But my other grandpa Johnson, he and Grandma lived in Mapleton. And I went there when I was 5 with my dad. I told you, my dad and my brothers. My grandpa was always at his desk writing. I remember that.
Was this Aaron? Aaron Johnson?
Yeah, he was always writing. But of course, I was 3, I guess, because it was before the divorce. We lived in Mapleton because that's where Stanford was born.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd walk by their house. He was always writing, and that was when I was 3. He was always writing his memoirs. But you know, the next year he died. He wrote all of his memoirs in longhand.
Wow. Aaron Johnson Jr.?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So, but I didn't really know him because he died when I was 4. And of course, Grandma Johnson, she'd tell us she'd be peeling apples for Kelsey, me, myself, and Stanford. Peel apples in the wintertime and tell us the stories about the pioneers. And of course, me being 9 years old, I didn't have any sense to take anything down.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't remember anything she said.
So you don't remember any stories?
No, just hardships of the pioneers and everything, the Indians and.
Because that was her parents and grandparents who had come across the plains, right?
She'd tell me about the Indians and the covered wagons but you know, that's all in history books anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But then I didn't know my Grandpa Johnson nor my Grandma Thompson, because I was real young. And in fact, I wasn't born when Mama's mother died.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So, but then I went, after I lived 2 years with Dad and the boys in Mapleton, before I had rheumatic fever, because I was 7. He had me go live with relatives. And I did with relatives all over. Thistle and, well, anyway, they were real good to me. They treated me real well. Never got upset with me from the time I was 7 until I was 10, came to live with my Aunt Myra in Mapleton. And she wasn't really an aunt by blood, but she was my Aunt Ann, who lived in Springville. She was her sister, so we always called her Aunt Myra. She wasn't blood related. She took care of me the whole year, though. She was so patient and good to take care of me. If she hadn't done that, I would have really had heart trouble, because now I still have a heart murmur caused from the rheumatic fever, but I can see, well, she, in the middle of the winter, I think she got me up too soon and sent me off to school. And I remember to this day, when I was 10, how weak I was. My legs were shaking and stuff, trying to walk to school in the snow. But she did all she could. She took care of me all those months, about 9 months in bed. And you can see her part of it. See how she figured to send me to school. Consequently, I got St. Vitus stance. I was so nervous. That's a nervous affliction. Because one day she had a stove, wood stove, that had a cistern in the side full of water, so it would stay hot to do dishes or whatever you need to wash your face with or stuff. You dip it out with a pitcher, with a handle, you know. So I was dipping the water out, and I started whirling around the room and stuff. She thought I was doing it on purpose. She says, "Stop." I said, "Well, I can't." And you know, it's your muscle, you don't have any control. So I couldn't walk, I couldn't talk. And so when I went to live with Mom, we went to Salt Lake when I was, 10 and a half, after Mom got me. My sister, my mother, and myself lived in this hotel room, and you know, like I told you before, till we went to Vegas. And Mama was a practical nurse. She helped the doctor deliver all the babies in Mapleton. And she knew what to do, so she held me up and taught me how to walk again. And I couldn't even say Jean. I still have a hard time saying Jean, anything with that sound. It's hard to say that. And she taught me how to talk again. And she took me to a specialist in Salt Lake, and he prescribed digitation.